My mother hid this for 30 years. And when I found out, he wasn't my father. I thought my family was normal, until I found a cassette tape in the secret safe at home. What I heard on it changed everything. Get ready for the most disturbing and thrilling story you'll hear today. Cedar Grove was the kind of place where the echoes of past choices still wandered the dirt roads. The town, nestled among pine trees and misty hills in Maine, seemed frozen in time. The wooden houses told stories the residents had long tried to forget. Jessica Langdon, 32, was back. After a decade away, it felt like stepping into a place where the air was thicker, heavier with memories than with oxygen. Sitting on the worn-out sofa in the living room of the house where she grew up, she stared at the fireplace as if she could find answers in the warmth of the flames. The wind whistled through the poorly sealed cracks of the house. Her mother, Karen, slept upstairs, lost in the limbo between the present and the past, a prisoner of early-onset Alzheimer's. Even in her sleep, she sometimes muttered strange words. "I saw... Jessie... I saw you all." Jessica pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She didn't yet know the full weight of what she had come to uncover. Henry Langdon had been a man of few words and many books. A literature professor, he'd quote Shakespeare while fixing the kitchen faucet or recite Sylvia Plath before bed. He was kind. But there was something in his silence that, over time, stopped feeling like calm and started feeling like a mystery. As a child, Jessica adored him. She remembered him reading stories in a soft voice as she fell asleep, the way his hand ruffled her hair after every scribbled drawing, and the smell of wood and coffee on his shirts. But she also remembered the night she saw him crying on the porch. She was 13. He was holding a photo, repeating softly, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Back then, Jessica pretended not to notice. Now, as an adult, she realized that moment was a crack, a fracture in the perfect mirror of her childhood. Karen was sitting in the armchair on the porch, staring into the void with a faint smile. Jessica handed her tea and sat beside her. "Mom, do you remember Dad playing the piano?" "Oh, of course." "Claire de Lune," Karen said, her eyes welling up. "He played it when he was lying. It was his way of forgiving himself." Jessica froze. "What do you mean?" Karen turned to her, but her eyes were already distant again. She mumbled something about the garage and seeing everything, before starting to hum tunelessly. Jessica went to bed with a weight in her chest. The next day, she began searching the attic. In an old wooden chest, there were notebooks, photos, and diaries. Karen had written for decades with a precision that contrasted with the chaos in her mind now. Amid dates and sentences about daily life, a name appeared. Claire. Today, Claire brought an apple pie. She laughed at the way Henry chops firewood. Laughed too much. "I don't know if I can trust those who say they love me anymore. What if it's all a lie? What if I'm just holding up a house of cards with fake smiles?" Jessica read with a lump in her throat. The more she read, the more she saw the strong woman her mother had been transforming into someone eaten away by suspicion. Claire still lived in town. Jessica approached the old white house with her heart pounding. The woman who opened the door was thin, with sunken eyes, but there was still something sharp about her. "Did you have an affair with my father?" Jessica asked bluntly. Claire gripped the doorframe as if the world had tilted. "That's not something you ask an old friend of your mother's. I'm not a child anymore, Claire. I know. I just want to hear you say it." Claire hesitated. Finally, she said, "It was before you were born. A mistake. A slip. He went back to your mother, but the damage was already done." Jessica swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to hear a no, even knowing it would be a lie. Memories came flooding back. Henry helping Jessica with her homework, teaching her to dance in the kitchen while the radio played jazz, the way he'd wink subtly when her mother got upset. But also the night she heard muffled shouts in the garage. She was 9. She crept downstairs barefoot, heard glass breaking, then hurried footsteps. Henry appeared, his face sweaty, saying everything was fine. Jessica believed him. But now, she remembered her mother's expression the next morning. swollen eyes, trembling hands, and the music on the piano, Clair de Lune, played with a sadness that filled the entire house. Inside Karen's room, behind the wardrobe, was the small key to the safe. The lock creaked as it opened, revealing old jewelry, sepia photos, and a cassette tape labeled with nearly faded letters. For Jessica. She turned on the old tape recorder, trembling. Jess, if you're listening to this, it's because I couldn't hide the truth from you forever. I was a weak man, and because of that, I hurt your mother. But I never stopped loving you. Never. Henry's voice came like a whisper from beyond. You were always my sunshine on cloudy days. And I lost myself because I didn't know how to handle the darkness. Jessica cried silently. Time passed. Karen died at the end of summer. Jessica handled everything alone. In the fall, a woman knocked on the door. Her dark hair was tied in a braid, her eyes intense. Abigail. My name's Abigail. Your father, he was my father too. Jessica froze. Abigail explained. She was born from an affair Henry had with a woman in Vermont. She'd learned everything through papers left behind after her mother's death. I don't want anything from you, she said. I just wanted to know who he was to you. Jessica studied her face, her features, and felt the same pain resurface. But for the first time, she didn't run from it. Jessica started writing. In the silence of the house, the words came to life. She wrote about truths that tear the skin, loves that hurt us and still shape us. The book became a kind of redemption. She traveled to conferences, heard stories from other women. She discovered her pain wasn't unique, and that freed her. On the last page of the book, she wrote, My father fell from a pedestal, but there, among the rubble, I found there was still love. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The following winter, Jessica hung a new frame on the wall. A collage with old photos, snippets of letters, sheet music, and dried leaves from the backyard. By the fireplace, a photo of Henry, Karen, and her, smiling at a picnic. She looked at Abigail, sitting on the couch, laughing with a cup of tea in her hands. It was strange. It was beautiful. It was imperfect, but real. The truth had fallen from the sky like a storm, devastating. But now, the sky was clear, and she could finally breathe. The storm raged outside, and thunder made the house shake. Karen was out, tending to her sick grandmother. Henry made hot chocolate. Scared of thunder, Jess? Only of what comes after, the things we don't see. He smiled sadly. He touched her hair as if hesitating to dive into his own past. Sometimes what comes after clears out what's rotten. But sometimes, it just reveals the mold. Jessica didn't understand, but years later, that phrase echoed back. Jessica, now an adult, explored the basement with a flashlight. She found a box of old tools, and under a loose floorboard, a face-down picture frame. It was a photo of Henry holding a baby who wasn't Jessica. On the back, a date, October 24th, 1990, 2 years before Abigail was born. Abigail had said she was born in 1992. Jessica stood paralyzed. Did he have more than one affair? Or was that baby me? Next to the photo was an unfinished letter, written in a hurry. Claire told me she might not be mine, but I look at her and see my soul. I can't let this destroy Karen's life, or Jessie's, but time will demand its price. Months after reuniting with Abigail, Jessica decided to take a DNA test, driven by the confusion of the dates and the ambiguous letter. The results arrived on a spring morning. The words were clear. Jessica Langdon, genetic parentage, inconclusive with Henry Langdon. A silence too heavy for words settled in. Jessica walked down to the lake. She sat on the wooden dock where her father had taught her to fish. So, who am I? She recalled a childhood conversation. Dad, what if I came from somewhere else? You came from where love lives, Jessie. And that place doesn't need an explanation. Just courage. She closed her eyes. Henry might not have been her biological father, but he was the man who loved, protected, and hurt her, just like real fathers do.